knows, but this is what it's doing on my end of the world. Plenty of white stuff falling out of the sky. Good day to be out doing something you love to do. Help there's more people than not doing something they love to do this Sunday. Well, I'm kind of late. I was getting light out earlier, but usually I can drive this old road real fast, but not so fast this morning. Oh well. That's why they call it winter steelhead fishing. There's actually something about having snow on the ground and the trees when you catch a steelhead in the rivers. Really adds to the experience. Hopefully I get one. If not, oh well. Get to go play out in the real world. Well, I'm a little lower in elevation now, so there's not as much snow down here. It's just starting to rain. End of the road. Time to hike. There's elk, taking the elk trails in here. Thick stuff. Will there be a fish for me here today? Definitely more water in there than last time. There it is. Little chunk of heaven right there. Way higher than last time I was fishing here. Boot print there, I think. Yeah, somebody was here. All right, here we go. Let's see what's in here. Well, it doesn't seem to be happening here. I think this might be a better spot with lower water. So I'll pack up, hike out, and hike into my go-to spot. Let's see what goes on there. There I am. End to a half day fishing. Not a bite. Nothing. Kind of sucks. But oh well. These things happen. Keeps you coming back for more, right? Drizzling rain. River's a little bit high, but we'll probably find a fish before it's over. The season's over. The prime time's over. Now, hang out here an hour before I go home. Been a little overwhelmed this past while, man. I'll tell you what. I've divorced my phone for over a week, and it hasn't been a bad thing. Hasn't been a bad thing. Lots in the go. Now, listen to this. This is titled My Story. This is fairly recent, I believe. Hello, Steve. I've watched your channel a while and didn't think I would send in my story. But when I heard the recent story from the fisherman with the truck who had some training and also saw a tiny bigfoot and possibly a mother, I thought I would share one of mine with you. I have quite a few. All starting when I was 3 years old. And this story is actually from when I was 5 or 6 years old, and I'm 50 now. This happened in the late 70s and in broad daylight with a group of res kids in an eastern Washington small town. We're all walking around near the small falls in the summer in the back of this trailer park / HUD housing complex. There were like 8 to 10 of us, all ranging from 5 to 11 years old. Anyway, we were playing on a little hill, and all of a sudden, I don't know if it was me or someone else who noticed a whole family or a few families of Bigfoot across from us on another hill walking up a trail. They were all sizes, hairy and reddish brown. We all stopped and stared, and were scared stiff in our tracks. They then noticed us, noticed them, and turned their heads and looked at us. The biggest kids, of course, started running down the hill first. And I know I have black hair, but in the summer, I get a red tone to it. I sometimes hear people say they see them with black hair. So maybe it's geographical, or perhaps it could also be the time they are out in the sun during the summer. I talked to a few of these kids that were there that day, and I asked them on one of a few occasions, you remember that day we saw those Bigfoot? Like, yeah, I remember. That was wild. I haven't noticed anything like that since. I feel since I have heard and seen them, since a young age, that I can't seem to go to the woods without them knowing I'm there. I will be walking in nature, listening to the sounds of birds and insects, and then it'll go silent. And then I leave. Anyway, thank you, Steve, for being a safe place to share experiences with the Lost Tribe. I do want to add, yes, Native elders always say that girls and women on the monthly should stay out of the woods. If they go, they should be accompanied by male family members. Just thought it might help those that go into the woods to be safe. Respectfully, Mary. Appreciate you, Mary. Yeah, even with big game, with big predators, it's a proven fact on the female humans that were attacked on average by wild game is during that time. Well, a whole bunch of them. Crazy. You got more of those experiences you want to share with the people, go ahead anytime. We're here. Lifelong hunter, and it finally happened. And it's going to be a long one. Is the title of this email. All right, here we go. Steve, don't mention my name. I do tell everyone my story, but just like to fly under the radar these days. For now, anyway. My name is blank, and I've had a few strange things happen while in the woods that I just can't explain away. But mostly just normal stuff with normal animals in the woods. I grew up hunting and fishing in Idaho, and one hunting trip with my son, we ran into Bigfoot, I believe. But before that happened, I had another encounter on a hunting trip, I should mention also, taking place in Idaho. After I'd set my small two-man tent up, I had tucked the bag for it under the edge of the tent, half under and half out. I usually just put it inside for some reason I didn't. Not expecting any wind, and knowing I was moving on in the morning, I figured it was okay. Later that night, I was awakened and didn't know why, so I just lay quiet and listened while I tried to breathe quietly. Then I heard something stepping around my tent. I had a 7mm STW inside. That's a cannon, for anybody who doesn't know. With me, and a 10mm Glock 20 with hard cast hot loads in my sleeping bag. And you can bet I got a hold of that 10mm. Then I heard it step on that bag. The one sticking out maybe a foot from underneath my tent, right beside my feet. I didn't hear sniffing. I doubt it was a bear, maybe a lion, but they can sneak into camp pretty quiet too, and have come into my camps in the past. Maybe raccoon? I could literally feel my heart beat as I controlled my breathing and listened, just waiting. Nothing. Just silence. Anyway, me being me, got impatient and figured, hell, let's get this shit started. Well, I have a gun in my hand, and not wanting to be up all night worrying, I had a choice to make. I knew it was close. Damn close. So I bent both my legs back in my mummy sleeping bag, still, and kicked out as hard as I could, and yelled, figuring that should scare whatever animal it was away. It probably hadn't had that happen. It probably hadn't had anyone do that before. I kicked it through my tent, and I about shit when I hit it. I could tell it was solid and had pretty thick hair, but couldn't determine what it was. Just solid, and felt hairy as best I could feel. I figured I'd get a startled grunt or hear a retreat or a jaw snap or a paw clawing or something as soon as the sheer surprise of actually kicking it wore off, but I didn't even hear a grunt or a twig snap, footsteps, nothing. Even though I heard it walking around my tent before, and you better believe I was listening so hard I could hear my heart beat again, nothing. Eventually I got back to sleep, and I didn't find shit for tracks in the morning, but there was no snow, and it was a very grassy area, and I didn't waste much time looking. I just thought it was a strange thing. No noise from it at all. It was definitely taller and bigger than a raccoon, and I still have no clue what the hell I kicked. Probably not my smartest move, kicking at it, but I guess I didn't have much flight in my fight, or flight reflex. Sorry, I didn't have much flight in my fight or flight reflex. Glad it wasn't a grizzly, LOL. Or if it was, it figured I was just a crazy idiot and left. Anyway, back to the one that made me certain that Bigfoot or Sabe does exist. This was also in Idaho, but I don't want to reveal the location just for their safety. No need to have someone hunting for them. My son and I we're looking for some new hunting area due to the 100 billion idiots moving in from California. We'll all think they're Jeremiah Johnson. So scouting in a new area, we took the Jeep up a small 2-track road to a lake. On the way, I was looking for tracks on the road just to see if there were people ahead of us, and animal crossings, of course, and nothing human that was recent, only the occasional deer. We noticed an old cabin on the way in and decided to check it on the way back. I found a bowl I wanted to walk and parked. As we geared up, I noticed a footprint. It looked like a nice-sized bear back foot. I didn't see any claw marks and just figured it was a real nice black bear. I didn't mention it because I didn't want my son to be nervous. He was young at this time, at 13, so I just asked if he was loaded, and he said yes. The hike was most uneventful, so we continued up to the lake in the Jeep. I saw a bunch of stacked rocks all over, as high as they would balance, so I decided to break the record and did. My son walked around the lake fishing while I was screwing off. I was looking for fish in the creek and getting some lunch out for us when I heard a tree knock. 3 distinct knocks. I thought, no way I heard that. Then it came again. Yep, that was real, I thought. I looked for my son, wondering if he was messing with me, and he was 200 yards in the opposite direction of the knocks, on the edge of the lake, not even looking my way. When he got back, I was excited to ask if he had heard the knocks, and asked if he heard that. He said, heck yeah, I heard it. It almost hit me. I said, what almost hit you? He said, the rock. It almost hit me. Well, I didn't hear a splash, and he didn't hear the knocking. He said it was maybe a grapefruit-sized rock that missed him by 10 feet and landed in the lake. Crazy. I wanted to head up towards the tree knocks because I had to go look just to see and possibly confirm that we both weren't just hearing things. I'm pretty much 100% confident in my shooting ability from hunting wild game since childhood, thanks to my dad and competitive shooting on national and international levels, plus the trusty old 7mm STW has put down anything I've ever shot with it, including running game from coyotes to multiple elk. And he had a 7 mag with him, lots of gun at his age. I know, but he was about 5'10" at that time and also grew up shooting and hunting. So we grabbed the rifles and walked up a trail towards the knocks. Missing a bit of punctuation, but that's all right. Found an old mine and checked it out, looking for tracks, and didn't see anything unusual. No more knocks or rocks thrown, so we decided to head back to camp and head back to the Jeep. And on the way back, we stopped at the old cabin we saw heading up. It was mostly falling down, no roof left, maybe 100 yards off the trail. There was an old burn barrel that looked newer than the cabin, and as him and I were looking in it, trying to date an old can or bottle, a rock landed inside the barrel between us. It was a small piece, maybe half an inch in diameter, and not with a lot of force, but definitely thrown, not just dropped. He looked at me and I looked at him. We could both see each other's hands the whole time. I turned and looked in all directions and saw nothing. Listening, sniffing, looking, nothing. We decided it was time to roll. Oh, maybe it might be some elk behind me or something. Sorry. We decided it was time to roll. Whatever threw that rock was close, and I couldn't see, hear, or smell it. Hearing something. On the way out, I'm looking for tracks or vehicles or any sign, and only ours are there. We are a good 5 miles in at this point, and no other road or main trail is within miles. Over very steep, rugged terrain, we come across a tree in the road. It was small and just looked pushed over, so I just drove over it. A quarter mile later, another tree slightly bigger pushed right across the trail. Now, there had not been... Fuck. Keep hearing shit. Sorry. Quarter mile later, another tree slightly bigger pushed right across the trail. Now, there had not been a breath of wind all day and no other tracks. No human had been up that trail but us in about a week. Well, I managed to get around it by driving over the top, and then half a mile further, another tree, a big one. Now I'm starting to get concerned, and that usually takes a bit. I left my chainsaw in camp, of course, so I have my son stand guard with the 7 mag while I get the winch on it, hoping it can get the job done. I tell him don't shoot unless it's aggressive or coming at you. If you don't stop, sorry guys, I'm getting rain on my screen. Damn it, I'm gonna lose my place. Sorry guys. I tell him don't shoot unless it's aggressive or coming at you. And if you do, don't stop until you're out. Don't stop until you're out, then reload. We got the tree moved and made it back to camp without any more incidents. So I guess we found a new hunting area that wasn't overran with people anyway. It was all enough for me to be certain they do exist. I always figured maybe, but this was just spaced way too far apart to all be a joke and too far out. The trees, at least the last 2, were too big for humans to push over. I'm not sure if anyone has experienced the stacked rocks in relation to any activity or not. It might just be kids. Heck, I had a couple myself. Maybe he didn't like being shown up. LOL. Anyway, sorry about the long-ass story, brother, but it's how it went. I tried to cut it somewhat short. I hope anyone who's had any experience still walks the woods like you are the baddest mofo out there, even though a pissed-off house cat could probably whip most of us unarmed. Haha. And yeah, I got a pic of that bear print on the way out, too. I might try to get it to you. Feel free to share. Thanks for being the voice for all of us. Okay, man. Thanks for sending that. I don't know if anybody remembers, but I've suggested to everybody here a few times, you go out anywhere, you should probably bring a chainsaw. You don't want that you don't want that to happen to you, right? Man, I've gone up some pretty nasty old shitty old roads numerous times, and I did just like I did just now. And the thought of having a big one pushed over the trail, blocking you from getting out, that's not very cool, right? Here's another one. I wanted to add to story shared with beat down truck bed. Okay, perfect. That's recent. Hello again, Steve. I want to share a story with you about being in a truck at night down by a creek in Inchellium, Washington. Inchellium, Washington. Inchellium, Washington. My mom and 4 of us kids were just sitting there listening to the radio when all of a sudden out of the forest came a Bigfoot. Dark and hairy and angry, banging on the hood of the truck and yelling. My mom started the truck and left. We were scared and excited. I feel as this has always been why I always had a fear of the woods. Anyway, I do have something to add, told to me from my kid's great-grandmother Rose. She said, when you're out in the forest hunting and fishing, it's always good manners to leave something behind for the Bigfoot. She also lived near a river in a small town and would always bring food out by the river and leave it for them. Also, in another email I had sent yesterday, I believe, I was told by her for females on their monthly not to be in the woods unless you are accompanied by male family members. Just thought I would share. Thank you, Steve. Random, right? Random. Hearing that in right after each other. There you go. I don't know why I'm not relaxed right here. I don't know what's going on. Here's some elk behind me, around me. So there's a bunch of elk here normally. Thought I was hearing something, but whatever. How long is this one? This one's not too long. I'm gonna get moving. I might even finish up in the shop once I get home, maybe. It's kind of shitty out here. This is titled My Story / Bigfoot. My name is Steve Shackelford. I am a 63-year-old retired police officer and have been a hunter and trapper for most of my life, and I'll try to keep this as brief as possible. It sounds familiar. My first encounter with something that I could not explain happened while coyote hunting one night. I parked my truck along a road and hiked down through a wooded creek valley to a clearing on a plateau on the other side of the creek where I had often had successful hunting. This particular evening, I had no success in calling in any coyotes. So I decided to return to my truck and try another spot. I entered the woods and was about halfway down the slope to the creek when I heard a very deep guttural growl from the direction of the plateau behind me. I froze in my tracks and listened intently. I turned and shined my hunting light up the slope with my 12-gauge shotgun at the ready, and I saw nothing, and I heard nothing. That said, I suddenly was overcome with a deep fear on the border upon panic. It was some instinct from my gut. Something was there that should not be there, was the feeling that I had. I turned and started down the slope again, and one more time that overwhelming fear took over, and I stopped and searched the woods behind me, and there was nothing. This continued all the way down the slope to the creek. I would move 5 or 6 feet and stop, frozen in fear. When I finally made the creek and crossed it, I ran like a sprinter up the steep hill to where my truck was parked. And all I can say was I heard the growl and was seized with a fear that I had never before experienced. As I mentioned, I've been a trapper since I was a teenager. I've been in a lot of places in the dark alone, deep woods, swamps, just about any kind of terrain, and I was never scared to be alone in the dark. Let me add that there are no bears or cougars around where I live. The next encounter was years later, and this one was a visual. My son and I were driving down a road about a mile from our home around dusk on a drizzly November evening, and as we were driving past a field that bordered a swamp, I looked over at the field with a hunter's eye and saw something that had me immediately hitting the brake. At the same moment that I hit the brake, my son, who was in his early 20s at the time, exclaimed, "What the hell is that?" What we saw was a figure about 8 to 9 feet in height, walking across the field in huge strides. It looked all black in the dusk, had a pointed head, and long arms. As I braked, my truck skidded down the road and we lost sight of the figure. I threw in reverse and backed up to where we'd seen the thing, and it was gone. I would have had to have covered at least 150 yards in something like 15 seconds to make the nearest timber. So I think he meant it would have had to have covered at least 150 yards in something like that, 15 seconds to make the nearest timber. The next encounters were tracks and structures. These were found in the winter and summer in the Charles C. Deam, DEAM wilderness area in southern Indiana, in the Hoosier National Forest, which is around 13,000 acres in size. I've enclosed photos of the tracks and structures. I'll add that these tracks and structures were found while off-trail hiking by GPS in the deep woods. I'm confident they are genuine because of where they were found. If faked, their being found would have been akin to being hit by lightning. I mean, there's no reason for anyone to arbitrarily being in these locations. They were far off any established hiking trails. I'll finish by saying these things have changed me. While I still hunt, I will not go to my stand until there is seeing light. While I still hunt, I will not go to my stand until there is seeing light. No more hiking into the dark woods for me. I've become apprehensive about the doors after dark. Steve Shackelford, Indiana. P.S. If you ever use this, feel free to use my name. Okay, man. I think I read this quite a while ago. The pictures looked familiar. And I will hopefully remember to stick these in the video once I get home. I know, sometimes I suck at that, right? There you go. More people. More new members, more members of the club, right? I think I might have read, I read this one. What if I should get going? It's kind of shitty out. How big's this one? This one's not too long. Maybe that battery will last long enough, and I'll share this one too. This is titled My Experience. My name is John H. Robison. Can't imagine you'd want to use this, but if so, feel free. Name and story. I don't pick and choose, my man. You let it rip. We're here to listen. Mid to late 80s. I'm living in my parents' house on W. Wood Street in Hillsboro, Illinois. When insomnia found me at 2:33 a.m. without sleep in sight, I'd grab my ultralight, walk to Oak Street, north to Springfield Road, which is IL-16, giving hard points in case you want to Google map it. I would walk west on 16 till I got to a driveway heading straight north. Just a little before you get to Cress Sur. CIR dot. Straight north of that driveway is a little spring-fed rectangle pond, less than a quarter of a football field. I fished that pond since I was a little kid, so I knew how to navigate in the dark. I took no light, no tackle, no nothing, but the pole with one lure on it, as I'd done too many times to count. One spring morning, I make my way to the pond, position myself at its northeast corner. I make a cast, hear the Johnson weedless spoon at the water, click the bail, reel in, feel it come out of the water, and the tight wiggle telling me I can cast again. I cast again, hear it hit the water, then a scream like a woman screaming for her life like I've never heard before or since, 25 to 30 feet to my 4 o'clock. Then I heard the ground being pounded, but more importantly, felt the ground shake. In total silence. Nothing cracked a twig or brushed a branch like anything would leaving the scene. Just total silence. The picture in my mind was of someone picking up a woman and rapidly slamming her on the ground. Too absurd to contemplate even as it was occurring. As nothing in my experience could account for what I'd heard and felt. Frozen for some minutes between fear, I disbelieve, I became aware of a voice in my head saying, "There's nothing in these woods that can hurt me," over and over again. I clicked the bail, reeled in all the way, made my way back through the trees, and made as fast and nonchalant walk back home. I remember thinking, don't run or it may chase you. For weeks, that scene played in my mind. It troubled and confused me. I cannot imagine what could do that. Nothing could do that, but something did that. What? If you happen to G-map this, take a look at the extreme west end of W. Wood Street. The north border of that field is what's left of an old trolley car line that used to connect Hillsborough with the rest of the world. Where the old line intersects the creek, there used to be a false creek bed that only fill up when the creek flooded. You can still make out where it used to be. Its north ended about halfway between the two bends in the creek. As it would dry out, it would leave a clay pan that would leave clearly the tracks of anything that would walk in it. 15 plus years before my experience, when I was 10 or 12 years old, I discovered bear tracks plain as day in that clay pan. They looked like babies' feet, only they're as long as mine. I tried to get my elders, who were more fluent in such things than I, to come and look and verify my findings, but a bear in the area being so preposterous, I remained the only one with knowledge of those bear tracks. As my brain was trying to figure out what screamed and shook the ground, I remembered those tracks. The conclusion that was forced upon me was that what I had seen were the footprints of an adolescent Bigfoot, that I'd had a Bigfoot experience. I'm cool with that. It's not kept me out of the woods for a second. I might be of a different mind if I had actually seen it. All right, man. There you go. That's one hell of a detailed description of where that shit went down. Welcome to the club. Welcome to the club. All right. This rain isn't making it any easier for me, and I'm freaking freezing. I am a freezing dude. Anyway. I'm going to start heading back home. If I see something cool or a cool view, maybe I'll stop there and share a couple more, or else I'll finish this up when I get back. Back in a minute. What's that? Holy cow. It's kind of deep. Thought maybe come look for some elk tracks, but I don't think they're up here. Well, what the hell? Couple more emails from here. Pretty bright up here, that's for sure. Meaning white. I guess basically central Vancouver Island here. It's real close to where I filmed that great big bull elk downhill in the timber. It's just back here a little bit. About, well, back in that forest behind me, off the bank. There's no elk up in this right now. They're probably laying down. So, I'm stopping. You know, it's funny, totally forgot. They're working on some power poles at home on the road. Sarah said there's no power today, so I just recalled that on the way home. So, there will be no power in my little man cave. No heater, no nothing. So might as well freeze out here, right? Where it's beautiful. Who do we got? This is titled 3 Weird Events of Phenomena. You can share my name. My name's John Miller from Northern Ireland. All right. Got a good friend of mine. He's one of my best friends from Northern Ireland. He's seen some crazy shit in that country. Hi, Steve. I've watched your channel for a couple of years now, and I have 3 events to share with you that took place in 2023. Event number 1. While looking out my kitchen window one night, admittedly looking for UFOs. This is around 9 p.m. And as I was staring out the window in the pitch black and stars for about 10 minutes, just as I was about to give up and leave the kitchen, a ball of light, or an orb, appeared. Just as I was about to walk away. It flew over my roof. The orb was maybe 20 feet from my roof. It looked exactly like a star, but only much brighter. I guessed it to be around the size of a basketball. It flew across my line of sight in a straight line, and I mean a straight line. Like it was on a monorail, steadily climbing as it flew away from me towards the top of the hill, and disappeared at about 200 yards away. And it disappeared in such a way, like if you had a dimmer switch on a light and you did it slowly, gradually dimming. Seen strange lights before, but this was different. My brain immediately went into overdrive, and panic went through my body as I was watching it. I just knew something strange was happening. I walked into the living room and sat down on the sofa, and for the next 20 minutes or hour, can't be sure, my brain was turning inside out like a Rubik's Cube, and my heart was pumping. I believe I was in some sort of a shock that evening, as I experienced shock before, unrelated matters. I told no one for the next week or so until, eventually, my birthday was coming up and received an invite round my sister and brother-in-law's for a meal. And the very first conversation out of my mouth, unplanned, was that of my story. With the sincerity of which I delivered, they immediately believed me, even though not being believers themselves, they could see the sincerity written all over my face. Wow. Event number 2. Same year of 23, maybe a couple of months later, I'm in bed one evening, and just before I was about to close my eyes, mind, I hadn't began falling asleep, I was just doing my first attempt, when all of a sudden something blew across my ear with a definite direction, as if it was using a straw. It scared the crap out of me. My eyes opened like 2 shutters. My heart was racing and my mind in overdrive again. Christ, I thought, what the hell did that? A few minutes of panic, questions, and attempts to reason later, I just convinced myself that perhaps I'd imagined it, even though I knew for sure I hadn't. And I felt it quite vividly. Just that moment, as I was about to close my eyes again, I heard and felt this merciful thud. This seemed to come from 2 rooms away from the outside of the house, And it had to have possessed incredible strength as I felt the whack of it from my bedroom, 2 rooms away. That sounded like a tree cracking. Unless it doesn't fall this way. Sorry. It had to have possessed incredible strength as I felt the whack of it from my bedroom 2 rooms away. Again, my heart beating out of my chest. It took an hour or more after that before I passed out asleep. It took me some weeks to start falling asleep, normally again after that event. This event made me begin to wonder if my first experience, an orb, was the arrival of Bigfoot, as this would explain the powerful slap on my outside wall. Event number 3. This is the strangest by far of all 3, and you're the first I've told about this. I'll probably tell no one else, as it's the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in all my days. Same window, my kitchen window, that I witnessed the orb in my first account. I'm watching one day as I live maybe 6 miles away from an airport and can see clearly planes taking off on a regular basis. I'm watching one day as an aeroplane takes off from the airport. I can tell all the normal patterns and directions of the planes as they go on their flight paths. So, one normal-looking passenger plane takes off behaving normally until it climbed. And just as it should have flew in a south direction away, at that moment there seems to be some sort of weird twist of its movement, and it's flying towards me. It took a few seconds for me to realize that it was flying towards me, perspective if you understand, as it flew towards my apartment. It was only at about 200 yards away and maybe 150 feet high. Super low. Then veered off to the right, passing by my apartment. That's strange, I thought to myself. I've never seen that flight path before, nor have I seen a plane flying at that height, which is maybe around 100 feet. It was a normal-sized passenger-type plane, and just at that moment, it disappeared behind some houses. I looked back to where it came from, the skyline where the airport is, and another plane that looked exactly the same takes off from the airport again at exactly the same flight path and pattern, doing the same characteristics and pattern, exact the same direction and altitude as the previous one. And as I kept my eye on it, at that exact same path, it started flying towards me. Wow. I thought that's crazy strange. I've never seen one plane take this direction, never mind 2. Again, it flew directly toward my apartment. And at 400 yards, it veered off to the right and disappeared behind the same houses. Exactly the same as the previous plane, like somebody had rewinded a videotape and played the same couple of minutes of a plane taking off. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in my life. Like some sort of weird glitch in the Matrix. It was so strange. It took me weeks to admit to myself that I'd seen what happened. This cannot be true. This is impossible. I was not mistaken. It was not just coincidentally 2 planes going by taking the same flight path. The plane looked exactly the same in both episodes and took exactly the same flight path, with same strange twist of movement. I was watching a rerun of something I had previously watched seconds prior. I don't know what to think about my 3 experiences other than, I must admit, I wanted to see something. I wanted to know if it was all true, and it feels like somebody's sending me this message and telling me, yes, all this is very true. It's changed my life and sent me on a path of truth finding like everyone else in this community. There's some comfort in knowing that it isn't just us, and that surely the paranormal and all these things exist, and life after death perhaps too. But there's something definitely disconcerting about knowing this as well. It changes your whole paradigm and how you look at life forever. Keep up the great work you're doing, Steve. The governments of the world are gaslighting us and trying to destroy decent people's lives at every turn. But screw them. We will get the answers for ourselves. At a carnivore diet to cure many diseases, really. All right, there you go. That's how you end the email. Carnivore diet. that cure diseases. That sounds pretty bizarre, man. But you're right. Everything does change. Obviously, right? Look what I'm doing. Everything changes once you know, right? Once you know, there's no going back. Once you know, you know. There's no escaping it. That's why it's the club of no return, right? Once you know, you frickin' know. Fog started to clear. I'll show you guys what I'm looking at now. See a little bit farther. Go. I wonder if anybody else has seen something similar, but I can't really say too much on that topic myself right now. I just know that it does somewhat mesh up in a way, right? Look at my phone. Something very odd is going on. Energy, vibration, parallel somethings. And I think a lot of people out there listening to this channel know. I think. All right, here we go. Listen to this. I wonder if they scared him to death, question mark. Hi, Steve. I've shared this story in abbreviated form in the comments section in the past, but thought I'd send it in its entirety with pics. I included the photos at the end with outlines since the vast majority of people can't seem to see things very well. The 3 photos are of tracks I found the morning after the encounter. They're on a hard-packed logging road with minimal dust for a logging road. And so here's the story. I was working as a firewatch on Thunder Mountain on the Bob's Butte area of Southwest Oregon. This is in 2016. I was alone with my dog except during weekdays between about 4 a.m. and 1 p.m. I got a creeped out feeling when my boss led me to the location. He helped me back my trailer into the spot he wanted me to park in and left. I was literally only a few feet away from high tension power lines. That in itself creeped me out, but knowing the woods devils, that in itself creeped me out. But knowing the wood devils travel power line roads made it even more creepy. But creeping out doesn't pay the bills, and my dog and I needed exercise, so we walked a couple times a day. Usually in the cool of the morning and again in the afternoon as we made our rounds to check for any signs of fire. For the first month or so, nothing too weird happened. Then we moved down the road into a clear cut that put us in a spot with a clear view of all the surrounding area. I don't know if that affected events, but I've had visits several times after moving into new areas that could be seen for miles. So I have to conclude it does. Sorry, I digress. One night, I woke to hear whistling similar to how a human whistles for a dog. I estimated it to be about a quarter mile away, but it was loud enough to wake me up. That didn't register till later. One of the equipment operators brought his dog to work, and my first impression was that it was him whistling for his dog. Then a second or two later, I heard it again, only about 1/8 of a mile away. And then I heard barking, like the dog had something treed across the ravine from me. I heard the whistle again, only a few feet from my trailer. It was unnaturally loud and had again traveled about 1/8 of a mile in only a couple seconds. I heard the answering bark a split second later. I reached for my phone to see what time it was, and it was just after midnight. I started to record the sound, and inside my head I heard, "Don't." At the same time my phone died. And then I heard unimaginably loud footsteps that literally shook the ground as the whistler, stomped past my trailer. I was overcome with absolute terror, which seemed strange as only a few seconds before I'd been curious but not afraid. I had many encounters over the years, so while aspects of this one were different, it wasn't my first rodeo, so to speak. I never heard any others moving. There was another firewatch just up the road from me, maybe 4 miles away, who was the yarder operator for another logging company. And a few minutes after my hearing the don't, I clearly heard a scream/bellow from the Sasquatch/Sabe coming from the direction of the other watchman's camp. Then again and again. After that, there was a silence. I lay in bed. My German Shepherd never made a sound. I finally fell asleep in the wee hours of the morning after the operators came in. I took my dog out and then put him back in the trailer as I checked the ground for footprints. I didn't really expect to find anything, as the road was hard packed with only a minimum of dust, at least for a logging road in the summer, which often has 6 or more inches of dust on them. The photos that follow were among several sets I found, and these were the ones that were most visible. The first is of a 4-toed creature. I wonder if this is the barker. The seven-toed individual was the whistler, I believe. The more human one was the one I found a few days later, after something loudly growled at me and my dog from the brush as we were walking the logging site. The marks below that one appeared to me to be knuckle marks. They weren't deer prints. I've seen literally thousands of deer prints in my lifetime. These were more like something sticking 2 knuckles in the dirt behind the print. As you can see from the photo, the human-like print is that of something or someone running with a deep toe dig. The ground was rough with pointy rocks. No person in their right mind would run like that. I showed these to a tribal elder who said his hunting partner had an encounter with the Bigfoot, and he told the rest of the party, no punctuation, they went with him to where he saw the creature and found the tracks similar to the 4-toed one. Later that morning, I found out my fellow firewatcher had died of a heart attack the night before in his trailer up the mountain. I always wondered if they scared him to death. A week or so later, my dog started barking and growling at something paralleling us in the bush as we walked. I called him back and went inside. A short time later, I noticed he was sound asleep. I couldn't wake him for almost 36 hours before he finally came around. He never did that before or after, and I never figured out what happened except that he was zapped, as some people will call it. If they do that to humans, they could literally carry them for miles with no resistance, as he was limp as a wet noodle. There was another one incident in that place. One evening, gotta switch hands, my hands are freezing. One evening, my brother drove up to replace my fuel pump on my pickup. As he left, literally as I watched him round a bend in the road, as he left, a tall alder started bending across the road. It was maybe 35 to 40 feet tall. It arched across the road until it broke in half, with the top laying in the road. I went to see what did it, but I couldn't find a bear. I went to see what did it, but couldn't find a bear cub, which was my thought, or hear anything running away. It's a backhoe creeping up the main road down there, if you hear that noise. There were marks on the bottom of the trunk where something dug its toes or claws. I couldn't move the alder top as it was too heavy. And the next day, the shovel operator, the loader operator, came and moved it with the shovel. He couldn't believe how it broke, about 15 feet up from the ground. If someone who has worked in the woods their whole life sees something they'd never seen before, you can bet it's not normal. There was no wind that day, and it was a spot that wasn't being logged, parallel to the road across from our site. That was my first time hearing the whistling and the barking, but certainly not the last time. Prior to that, if I heard a bark in the woods, I figured it was a coyote yapping, and now I know that's not necessarily true. Best regards from Kathy. Okay, Kathy, there's the photos. I'll have to throw them down. 7 toes, shit. I'll have to throw those down in once I get home and on the computer. and I'll load them up, all right? And it's not that people don't see things online. It's footprints. Prints are real hard to capture in broad daylight and gravel. They just are. It wouldn't matter what type of print it was. It's tough. I think a lot of people will shine a light across prints in the gravel when it gets dark. Shine the prints here and you shine the light off from the side, and that really lights them up and shows the outline. If you want to try that another time, if it ever happens again for anybody out there, if that's a good way to take a photo of a print. But anyway, there you go. Whistling, barking, that's not common. But the whistling sure is. Anyway, I guess I better try to get this thing turned around, not get stuck. I kind of suck. It's funny, every time I go in the woods, somebody's cutting firewood. I don't know how much firewood I've actually got from people cutting firewood and they leave the odd round in the ground or a few rounds in the ground. You can tell they took a whole tree or something, but these rounds were sitting right in the middle of the old road, so it's good wood. I grab that stuff. I grab it when it's sitting there laying down. And there's weight in the truck for the snow too, right? But anyway, what day is it today? It's Sunday? That must have been a tree breaking in half. Lots of heavy snow load, right? Snapping branches. What's going on? Tomorrow morning I gotta go to the clinic. I gotta see about getting an operation myself. Sarah's gotta go to the clinic, and then we're gonna go do a shop for the hungry children that the membership section of this channel is paying for. What's that gonna be, the 4th time, I think? I think it's gonna be her 4th shop. And I think the last count was 33 kids you guys have fed. And 7 adults, or 9, 12, I don't know. She knows the number. I told her to keep track of the numbers just because I want to know. I want to get that the hungry child count up as high as I can. Anyway, there you go. Share my story at howtohunt.com. That's where you get it shared word for word. And if you do want to join the membership portion of the channel, I don't know how to. If you go on your if you have an iPhone, you have to go to a browser, your Safari browser, and then log on to YouTube, and then you'll find the option to join a membership. And if not, you have to use your laptop or your regular computer at home. Okay, that's how you do it. There you go. I gotta go. I'm frozen, and I'll be back later on without a doubt.